Today, we're dining at the exclusive restaurant I've always admired, the Platinum Table. I was thrilled. My name is Harumi. I'm 40 years old with no children. I work part-time in an office job. My husband is Charlie, 42 years old. Today, my father-in-law and mother-in-law said, "Let's dine out once in a while. We'll treat you." So we took them up on the offer. My mother-in-law explained why she chose this restaurant. You can see the courtyard from the room, and the courtyard is very beautiful, especially at night when it's all lit up. Truly a luxurious restaurant. With a courtyard, that's even quite enchanting. To be able to enjoy a delicious dinner there, I put on makeup, something I rarely do, and eagerly went out to the gathering with Charlie. "We have a reservation. The name is Westwick," said father-in-law to the waitress who came to greet us. "Mr. Westwick, yes, we have been expecting you. Right this way, please." The waitress who greeted us was also dressed in lovely clothes, so elegant. We were then led to the lounge area and were served aperitifs and olives as appetizers at the grand table. In the middle of the big table was a large pink lump that looked like a rock. "What is this?" I asked. "Could it be a power stone? It's almost too large for me to hold." "This is Himalayan rock salt. You're supposed to sprinkle this on the steak when it's served," father-in-law explained. Wow, I was surprised by father-in-law's explanation. I never knew there was such a beautiful pink salt. Everything was incredible, but contrary to my exhilarated mood, something odd began happening at the restaurant. No matter how long we waited, there was no sign of us being led to our dining seats. The olives were all gone, and the glasses that held the aperitifs were starting to dry. An hour had passed when father-in-law, looking a bit nervous, stopped a passing waitress and asked, "Excuse me, we had a reservation for 6 p.m. under Westwick. Is our meal not ready yet?" The waitress replied, "Mr. Westwick, I have noted your name. Please wait just a little longer," and then left without returning. At first, mother-in-law had been saying things like, "Let's wait patiently." But by the time 2 hours had passed, even she started saying this is too much. And rightly so. We had a reservation for 6 p.m. and now it was 8 p.m. But our meal still hadn't started. We should have been done eating by now, but instead we were still waiting in the lounge area. Isn't this something that just shouldn't happen, especially at a high-end restaurant? Even if it weren't a fancy place, it would still be strange. Mother-in-law called over another passing waitress. "Excuse me, we have been waiting for 2 hours since being told to wait a little bit after making our reservation." The waitress said, "Oh," and ran off. After a while, a woman dressed in a classy outfit came out, different from the waitress we had spoken to before. We knew at once that she was the manager. She must have been around 50 years old. With her hair pulled up and pinned into what looked like a hair tower, she seemed even taller. Introducing herself with this towering hairstyle, she said, "I'm Newport, the manager of this restaurant. I apologize for the inconvenience this evening." Mother-in-law repeated, "We are the Westwicks. We made a reservation, didn't we, for 6 p.m.? "Yes, indeed, you did," Miss Newport confirmed. "Then why didn't you seat us for our meal at 6 p.m.? Mother-in-law pressed further. "Well, I'm terribly sorry. At 5:30 p.m., we had some last-minute guest who asked to be seated at 6 p.m., this hair tower explained. "What?" Mother-in-law raised her voice at this unexpected turn of events. "I booked a table 2 weeks ago, didn't I?" "We have your reservation." "Then isn't it ordinary practice to say that the reservations are full because of some sudden booking, rather than this?" At this point, Miss Newport began to say, "Yes, so we let you into the restaurant at 6 p.m., right? We guided you to the place to wait at the time of your reservation. However, since another reservation suddenly came in, we thought we would guide you as soon as the room becomes available." It seemed as though she thought that was perfectly normal. Wait, I have never heard that it's okay just because the time we were guided to the lounge area was according to the reservation. My mother-in-law was outraged, but Miss Newport shrugged her shoulders and blurted out, "You should understand if you hear the position of the person who made the sudden reservation." What?" "It was the CEO of Evergreen Electronics." "Evergreen Electronics? I know the name, at least. It's a big company around here." "So we will prioritize that, won't we?" Miss Newport said as if it were a matter of course, but my mother-in-law bravely stood up to her. "It's not acceptable to have an upper and lower rank among customers. It's supposed to be first come, first served. Despite my mother-in-law's shouting, Miss Newport didn't flinch. That's your selfish assumption, isn't it? The rules of our restaurant are different. We are a gathering place for winners. Poor people, please go home. Miss Newport arrogantly said. At the hair tower, the sheer audacity of her attitude felt like it grew 3 meters taller. Well, it must be my imagination. Poor person? My father-in-law's voice cracked at hearing this. For what it's worth, my in-laws are not poor. They're quite wealthy, in fact. But Miss Newport, glancing at me in surprise, laughed through her nose and said to my father-in-law, "You are not a CEO, are you?" "Well, I'm not a CEO," my father-in-law timidly affirmed. My mother-in-law's anger only intensified from there. "Hey, all professions are equal, aren't they?" These words were snapped out, but Miss Newport dismissed them lightly. "That's impossible. Excuse me, but what's Mr. Westwick's occupation?" Father-in-law stammered his reply. "I teach archaeology at the university." "Well, please spend your life digging for ammonites at archaeological sites then." Miss Newport sharply said this with a scoff. "You don't need social interaction for digging ammonites, do you? As I said before, our place is a social venue for the winners." Then Miss Newport further criticized my mother-in-law. "Mrs. Westwick, there's a problem with you too. Your appearance exudes poverty." "What?" Mother-in-law raised her voice. Being suddenly criticized about her clothing would naturally make anyone angry. "I have heard that in Japan, Osaka lady wears shirts with leopard faces on them. Is that what you're wearing?" "A leopard?" It wasn't a leopard, but mother-in-law was wearing sparkly clothing. By that time, Miss Newport's gaze had completely shifted to looking at them as low income. "Oh, how distasteful. Osaka lady must haggle in department stores too, right? Wearing those kind of clothes." "That's an awful prejudice. I'm from Japan, so I know, but there really aren't people who haggle in department stores. And for what it's worth, the clothes described as what an Osaka lady might wear are likely branded and expensive. Everything, professions and all, is built from prejudice in Miss Newport's mind." "Poor people should go to the drive-thru of a fast food restaurant. Your table might be ready around 10 p.m., I was thinking. But a rushing poor person is out of place here and has spoiled our mood. Please go home." Then Miss Newport said to the waitress behind her, "As soon as these people leave, make sure to sanitize. Poverty attracts more poverty, you know." Mother-in-law angrily stood up and said, "Enough, we're leaving." Really, the nerve of her! I have never felt so disgusted. Eventually, the four of us discussed what to do, and father-in-law suggested, "Let's go to our usual sushi bar." So we went to a sushi bar. It was quite upscale, and I was really satisfied, but mother-in-law continued to fume. What was with that condensation? It was so unreasonable. And what's this about an Osaka lady? I can't help but be curious about what an Osaka lady even is. Well, Osaka lady refers to, I began to explain, it's about women who live in Osaka, Japan. Not all of them, of course, but there's an image that they like inexpensive yet good things, are cheerful, have loud voices, are caring, and like animal pattern clothing. Like the clothing I'm wearing now, for example? Well, there's a wide variety, so there might be something similar. I found Miss Newport's familiarity with Osaka lady amusing, but mother-in-law's anger was at its peak. That Miss Newport should be brought down to poverty by those she looked down on as poor people. At mother-in-law's intensity, the three of us gulped down our prized Toro without chewing. Now, less than a month from that incident, mother-in-law contacted us. "We are going to the platinum table." What? I exclaimed over the phone. Even though we were bound to have another unpleasant experience, why? "It's for dinner, of course. Let's go at the same time as last time, 6 p.m. Okay. They invited us, you know." Mother-in-law said with a laugh and then hung up the phone. That weekend, we were back at the platinum table by 6 p.m. As soon as we arrived at the restaurant, the waitress was already at the entrance to greet us. "Mr. and Mrs. Westwick, I presume we have been expecting you," she said. And we were seated as soon as we were served pre-dinner drinks and olives in the lounge area. You could tell the room facing the courtyard was the best one, and the dishes that came out were all incredibly delicious. Caviar and herbs were served with each dish, all cooked with great care. A feast for both the eyes and the tongue. Towards the end, a steak was served and we were told to eat it with Himalayan rock salt. The steak's deliciousness, its savory taste, and the depth of the Himalayan rock salt, it was heavenly. I felt like I was floating to the sky. The garden lit up as we looked around, made me feel like a queen. Such a dreamy time came to an end, and as we were having sherbet, Miss Newport came over. "Mr. and Mrs. Westwick, how was your meal?" "Yes, it was absolutely delicious," my mother-in-law smoothly replied as she sipped desert wine. Seeing this, Miss Newport looked relieved and began to apologize. "I sincerely apologize for causing any discomfort due to our rudeness on this occasion." But after everyone finished their sherbet, mother-in-law said, "Thank you for your meal. I suppose we won't be meeting again." "What?" Miss Newport exclaimed. "We came here only because you said you wanted to talk. We ate the food because it was suddenly served to us, but what's the point?" "What's the point? After all the eating and drinking, mother-in-law? Do you understand what's going on?" Despite having finished her meal so neatly, mother-in-law started questioning Miss Newport even more. Miss Newport's voice became quieter, and then she confessed to her wrongdoing. "We are a social venue for winners, telling a poor person to leave and such disrespectful remarks." "That's right. So when you said that, my response was, 'Oh, really? Then let's terminate the deal?'" Mother-in-law slowly and quietly placed her glass down. Miss Newport's face turned even paler. Miss Newport's tower of hair seemed about 5 inches lower than before, and then the spire of that hair tower fell. What a profound apology. "I'm so sorry. I never thought Stellar Tech Group would cancel all the deals." So that's what it's about, I realized. Mother-in-law was the head of the General Affairs departments of Stellar Tech Group, which had branches all over the U.S. Whether it was the closing ceremony of the manager's training, appreciation gatherings, group dinners, on company trips, or intergroup mingling, it was the General Affairs department that made the arrangement. Mother-in-law was the top of that department. She must have also instructed the subsidiaries not to use this restaurant. The one who arbitrarily decided that you're not a winner if you're not a CEO and not a winner if you wear a leopard print was you, wasn't it? Mother-in-law sneered and then said, "Don't underestimate the General Affairs Department and don't underestimate people who aren't CEOs. "I truly apologize for the rudeness. I'm so sorry." Miss Newport bowed even lower. "What exactly are you sorry for? Would you like to tell me?" Mother-in-law said, looking down at her. "I wrongly judged you, Miss Westwick, as not being a winner based on appearance." Mother-in-law sneered again and waved her hand. "That's not it at all. You don't understand why I'm angry." I looked back and forth between mother-in-law and Miss Newport. "You know what? I'm the head of the General Affairs Department at Stellar Tech Group, and let me be clear about this. The General Affairs Department is like a jack-of-all-trades for the company's employees. Anything and everything comes to the General Affairs Department. No matter who it is, whether it's about their family or social life, people come to the General Affairs Department with their concerns. Our job is to be there for them and support them in whatever they need. And so when you think about it," mother-in-law said and then slammed the table. "The idea of winners and losers judging people by your own standards is incredibly audacious. Is the CEO the only winner? That's laughable. Every single person is struggling and living their life. If you're going to label them winners or losers, then unless a person thinks they have lost, everyone's life isn't a loss. You can say it's in the middle of the game, so as long as you don't think you have lost in life, you haven't lost. Others shouldn't be arbitrarily judging and meddling in that. As someone who's always been there for others, I have never judged anyone as a winner or loser in my role in general affairs." Father-in-law said, "In that sense, being involved in the world of archaeology, something I've been interested in since I was a child, makes me a winner at the moment. Though ordinary, enjoying casual conversations with Harumi and having a family like that makes me feel like a winner too." I couldn't be outdone and proudly said, "Though it's a part-time job, I'm contributing to the company. I'm on good terms with Charlie, so I feel like a winner too at the moment. Now, about this clothing you arbitrarily labeled as poor person, oh, I'm really sorry. Do you think that being rich means only having something with a huge brand logo? And what do you mean by that?" "This is a custom-made piece, you know. It costs $70,000, but if you didn't realize that, isn't it your lack of discernment that caused this situation? Shall I tell you what brand it is?" Mother-in-law mentioned a foreign brand that seemed out of my reach. Miss Newport somehow stifled a scream. Mother-in-law casually pinched the chest area of the garment and smiled. Look at this. Each decoration is hand-stitched. This is practically an art piece. And to think I wore it to a garden and a store that I thought had the dignity to match. Your lack of discernment is truly regrettable. Miss Newport weakly sat down and began to cry, looking down. Well, shall we go? After a while, mother-in-law stood up. Miss Newport quickly raised her bowed head and clung to mother-in-law's feet. I sincerely apologize. You don't have to pay. Mother-in-law said, shaking off Miss Newport, who was clinging to her leg. I will pay. We only came because you called us. The food came out, though we didn't order it, so we ate it. But it's troubling if you accuse us of dining and dashing, and it's annoying to be accused of that by someone who judges winners and losers. Consider this a farewell gift and accept it gratefully, she added. But Miss Newport clung on even desperately. Oh, if Stellar Group abandons me, both this restaurant and I will truly become losers. Please have mercy. Enough. Mother-in-law snapped, cutting off the cries. You're not a loser until you admit you have lost. Were you listening to me? Well, maybe not. With your attitude of arbitrarily judging customers' wins and losses, maybe you don't have the mind to understand such things. What really influences the direction of life is things like fate or luck. In that sense, this restaurant is facing a tough battle with strong headwinds ahead, but think of it as payback for looking down on people and judging them. Mother-in-law finally shook off Miss Newport. Still crying and clinging on, Miss Newport heard mother-in-law say, You prioritize Evergreen Electronics over us, and they are a client of Stellar Tech Group. Their CEO probably won't come anymore. Soon after, the Platinum Table went out of business. It seems the location became a franchise restaurant. Since mother-in-law's company was the top customer, it seemed natural. Miss Newport tried to negotiate work at the restaurant but was refused, and since she was known in the community as the woman who closed that fine restaurant, she still hasn't found work. It appears father-in-law heard this from the restaurant manager when he went there with his university students. The manager was wryly smiling, saying, I can't pick up a hand grenade, you know. A month later, mother-in-law came back from work with an abundance of flower bouquets. That day, Charlie and I rushed to celebrate with her. It was so much to carry home that I had to ask for delivery, mother-in-law said, delighted. The day marked mother-in-law's retirement from the company. Our employees are our greatest asset. The words mother-in-law had displayed in her room epitomized her approach to her HR work, as she stood close with everyone from part-timers to full-time staff. She even received many flowers from the part-timers. Well, I will remain with the company as a consultant for another 5 years, but after being treated like this, I wonder what face I should wear to the office tomorrow. My mother-in-law laughed. You have received so many bouquets and cards. You're blessed. Surely you're a winner at the company, aren't you? I'm far from done. I'm still in the middle of the game. I haven't won or lost yet, came the spirited reply. The cards also had words written on them. We look forward to another 5 years. I was so moved that I was on the verge of tears when mother-in-law caught me. Oh my goodness, are you crying? Pollen? It's my allergies. It's rare to find someone like mother-in-law so beloved and respected by her employees. I believe she will continue to be my proud mother-in-law. That's what I thought.